Welcome back to a special edition of the Dershow. I didn't want to miss an opportunity to give you my views on last night's debate and on the Supreme Court decisions today. Let's start with the Supreme Court's decisions. The Supreme Court made a very wise and good decision on the January 6th protesters. It limited the application of the criminal law and narrowed it beyond that which the Justice Department was using it. Um, it will take time to see how the lower courts apply the decision, but it's a good day for civil liberties, a good day for America. I think when we see criminal statutes, which today have become so weaponized, being narrowed. It was a 6-3 decision, but one of the people who joined the majority in a concurring opinion was one of the liberals, and one of the conservatives joined the liberals. So we're seeing a little bit of shakeup. Of course, we're waiting for Monday. Monday, we will hear the immunity decision, almost certainly because it's the last day. The Supreme Court also today cut back on what was called the Chevron doctrine, which gave enormous power to administrative agencies. And I think, too, that was probably a victory for civil liberties, but also a victory for conservatives and a defeat for liberals who love what they call the administrative state, administrative agencies having enormous power. We're seeing a substantial cutting back on the power of the administrative state. Those are the major Supreme Court decisions of today. But let's wait for Monday because that will be very important as to whether or not President Trump could be prosecuted successfully for January 6th in Washington, D.C., and perhaps in Georgia as well. But let's turn to the debate last night. It was very upsetting for me to watch the debate. I know Joe Biden. I've known him since 1980. He's never, been the most articulate guy in the world, and he had a cold yesterday, and he did not have a good night. I thought substantively he wasn't bad. He stated his views, and if anybody actually cared about the substance of the debate, it was a toss up. Trump stated his views, very different views, and Biden stated his views, and nobody really listened. What people were doing, as I predicted on this show, and I predicted in my writings, this was not a real debate. This was a display of exhibits. Exhibit A was Joe Biden. Is he competent? Is he able? Is he too old? He was an exhibit. People were watching him and listening to him, not for what he had to say, but for how he said it. And as far as Trump was concerned, he was an exhibit. People were seeing whether he could control himself. And I predicted that Trump would win the debate. My predictions, you could really count on them. I predicted Trump would win the debate because he has more of an ability to control what people were looking for about him than Biden did. Biden can't control his cognitive issues, his verbal issues. They are just things that come out. You can have 12 days or 15 days of debate preparation, but when you're on the stage, you have no control over that. He had a raspy voice. He didn't complete some of his sentences. That's not within his control. But Trump's problems, and there are many, were within his control, and he controlled them to a degree. Of course, the New York Times argued that everything he said was untrue. By the way, they didn't do that in op-ed or editorial columns. They did that in news columns on the front page, confusing news with opinion. But people don't care as much about that. He came across as dynamic and as certainly cognitively able. And so he won the debate by the measures that were very important. Well, today's New York Times, virtually, maybe actually, every columnist in the Times is calling for Biden to withdraw. Be careful what you wish for. If Biden were to withdraw now, there would be a tremendous fight within the Democratic Party as to not only who would replace him, but what kind of a candidate would replace him. The crazy progressive anarchists who have flooded universities and flooded the streets of cities with these horrible anti-American, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel protests are going to try to take over the Democratic Party. They're going to try to get people like Jamal Bowman, who lost dramatically the other night. Not somebody like him who's such a fool, but they'll try to get somebody very radical to replace Biden at the top of the ticket. And although the vast majority of Democrats, like the vast majority of Americans, are centrists, the people who control the party tend to be more progressive and more to the left. And certainly the people who have an influence in the party, like Morning Joe or MSNBC or CNN or the New York Times, are going to be pushing for a radical progressive alternative. Whether a radical progressive can win, I don't know. There'll be some pressures on Michelle Obama to run. She's considerably to the left of Barack Obama, and but she would be an attractive candidate. She has, of course, great name recognition and support among many Democrats. There are others as well from the left who would make a pitch. And the Chicago Convention this year will make the Chicago Convention of 1968, which I remember very vividly, seem like a walk in the park. It literally was in the park. The demonstrations, I defended some of the people from the Chicago Seven on their appeal from their convictions. So I'm very familiar with what happened in Chicago in 1968. It will happen again here in 1968 as progressives and anti-Semites and anti-Israel and anti-Americans and anarchists will try to take over the Democratic Party, and they may succeed. So be careful what you wish for. By Joe Biden will be Joe Biden. Can he win the election? He could win the election. It's possible. It's very close, and I'm interested in seeing what the polls show after the debate as to whether the debate will have much of an impact on voting. Because I think most Americans have probably made up their minds as to who they're going to vote for. But what worries me greatly is the direction of the Democratic Party, the movement of Democrats toward the hard left. We're seeing that in England as well. We're seeing trends. And I think we may see that in the United States. It would be bad for America, bad for the Democratic Party, bad for the world, bad for Israel. Bad for Ukraine, bad for peace, if a radical left-wing so-called progressive Democrat got the nomination. The most likely candidate to get the nomination would be Kamala Harris. She would not be a strong candidate, but she would be acceptable to most wings of the Democratic Party. She is more to the left than Biden, but she's not a crazy radical. But is she really competent and qualified to be the next president? Of course, if Biden gets nominated, it's very likely she will be the next president anyway, either because Biden will not be able to finish his term. He'd be 86. I'll be 86 pretty soon, but people age differently. Either because he won't be able to finish his term, or if he does, she would be the likely candidate to become the next nominee of the Democratic Party. I don't think most Democrats want to see Kamala Harris in the White House, but they may have no choice. Look, even if Biden remains on the ticket, this is not a shoo-in for Trump. There are a number of Americans, a very considerable number of Americans, who could not, under any circumstances, vote for Trump. Many of my friends and family members are among them, and so he may have a limit to how far he can go. He's never won the popular vote, obviously, and even if he won for president this time, he would do it through the Electoral College, not through the popular vote. Even the polls that show him winning the election don't show him winning the popular vote. They show him within a few points of winning the popular vote, but this will be a very close election. Will Biden stay on? I think we'll know that in the next weeks, maybe even sooner than that. I'm sure today he's getting calls from many people, including, I think one of the keys will be Barack Obama. If Barack Obama says to him, Joe, you got to get out of this thing, he may get out of it. Certainly if he were to say it in public. I don't think he'll say it in public, but if he were to say it in private. So I'm very interested in knowing what Barack Obama thinks and what he's communicated to Joe Biden. By the way, I did not think, and my wife and I had a big disagreement about this. I did not think that Joe Biden did as bad as many of the media say he did. He didn't do well, but he got a lot of his ideas across. He mumbled, and his verbal skills were very mediocre, and he had some problems with some words. But that's what happens when you're his age. Um, I thought that his performance was subpar, but not disqualifying. But apparently, a lot of Democrats and a lot of uh, people in the media think differently, and they will have much more of an influence on what happens than somebody like me. I felt sorry for Joe Biden. I think he's a decent man. I know some of my viewers and listeners don't agree with me. I think he's a decent man. I think he's um, tried very hard to bring Americans together. I don't think he has succeeded. I don't think his presidency will go down in history as among the great presidencies, but it will also not go down in history as the worst presidency or among the worst presidencies, as President Trump falsely stated yesterday in the debate. He will go down in history as an okay president who did some okay things and did some things that are not so okay. But that's not the question for the Democrats today. The question for the Democrats today is cost benefit. What is the cost of replacing Biden at this point? What is the benefit of replacing Biden? Can a new candidate actually win? I'll give you an example of somebody. There's a guy named who nobody knows, the governor of Pennsylvania, a swing state that can determine the presidency. His name is Josh Shapiro. I don't know him, but I followed his career. He's young, articulate, and moderate. He's moderate left, moderate liberal, but he's not a crazy radical. And he has no name recognition, but you don't need name recognition if you're running for president. If he were to get the nomination, he'd have months to create name recognition. He would do very well in a debate with Trump. I don't think Trump will have another debate. I think he thinks he's won. So why have another debate? And I'm not proposing Shapiro. I'm just mentioning his name as one among many of non-name recognition unknown candidates who could put up a pretty good fight against Donald Trump. There are others as well, some of whom I don't even really know, but governors and senators and prominent people from the Democratic side who are more centrist and more moderate and who conceivably could win an election. But not a good day for the Democrats yesterday. Not a good day for America, I think, because what we saw were two candidates, both of whom have issues and problems. I think most Americans today would say that if they had their druthers, if they had a choice, they would rather see two other candidates running for the presidency of the United States. But that's not the reality. The reality is it will be Trump, and it will either be Trump against Biden or Trump against somebody who is not particularly well known. And the big question for the Democrats is if they have to replace Biden, will they try to replace him with somebody from the center? Will they have pressure to replace him with somebody from the left, somebody who could get younger people, the progressives, the crazies, the useful idiots who are marching in the street? Will they try to move in that direction? If they do, they're going to lose people like me, obviously, and many other centrists and independents. But they may feel that, we're the past. They have to focus on the future, and the future are young progressives. It could destroy the Democratic Party. And I think what we missed on the stage yesterday was Bobby Kennedy. I think he deserved to be on the stage. He's getting a lot of polling votes. Probably will get more as a result of yesterday's debate. But it's not going to be a three-way race. It's going to be a two-way race, and we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see. So, big day yesterday, big day today. Supreme Court, bigger day coming up Monday for the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will decide probably on Monday whether the president has qualified immunity. Immunity for certain acts, but not other acts, whether the immunity carries over to after he was no longer president. We'll see that decision. I've made a prediction. The Supreme Court will split the difference. It will give him some immunity, but not all the immunity he wants. And it will say that whatever immunity he had while president carries over to the post presidential period. Otherwise, it would be of no use at all. So we'll wait and see tomorrow, Monday, what the Supreme Court decides. I'm still in Anchorage, Alaska, so I'm way behind. I was woken up early this morning by the announcement of Supreme Court decisions, and I'll be traveling as well on Monday. But we'll have a podcast hopefully, and we'll evaluate the Supreme Court decisions then. Okay, so a couple of letters. Set aside politics, but please don't overlook the elephant in the room: President Biden's cognitive issues. Nobody's overlooking that. I'm not sure they're cognitive issues. I think they may be more just issues of his inability to express himself verbally clearly. People say that when they're in a room with him privately, and I haven't been in a room with him privately in years. I used to spend time with him, but not since I defended President Trump on the floor of the Senate. I've been verboten from any Democratic politics. So I've had no contact with Joe Biden since he's been president. But people tell me that his cognitive abilities are fine. It's his verbal abilities that are not. One more letter. This is about that jerk who lost his race for Congress, Jamal Bowman. He said he pulled the alarm because he thought it was a door opener. You can exit now, Mr. Bowman. Your party has opened your exit door. Goodbye. I think that's true. I think that the election the other night is a bellwether for where the Democrats should be going. Whether they will be going there, I don't know, but that's where they should be going. And so this was a quick, shortened show, just giving you my reaction to the presidential debate yesterday. I'm worried. I'm worried for America. I'm worried for the Democratic Party. I'm worried for Israel. I'm worried for world peace. I'm worried that the event last night may turn the Democrats to try to select an extremist, and if they do, they will lose. But there's a possibility they could win with an extremist, and that would be a terrible thing for America. So stay tuned. I'm on top of it, and what I believe and what I espouse, I will share with you as often as I can. And let's hope and pray that whatever the Democrats do, they will try to move the country toward the center. They will try to move the country away from radicalism, and that both parties will try to move the country toward the center. I had hopes yesterday in the debate that that would happen, and substantively it did. We didn't really hear a lot of radical views expressed. We heard some of them expressed in a kind of radical way, a lot of name calling, which was not particularly acceptable. But that's the nature of our politics today. So have a good weekend, everybody, and I'll see you on Monday.